I swear, this was one of those moments where you think, wow, this might actually be it. The chemistry was there. The timing was perfect. Every green flag you can imagine was waving in my face. And then one sentence. Just one. And it was like watching someone trip right before crossing the finish line. This is the story of how a man went from, I could see a future with him, to, I never want to hear from you again, in less than 10 seconds. And the worst part? He still thinks he did nothing wrong. I wasn't even looking for anything serious when I met him. That's usually how it happens, right? I had just come out of a phase where I was tired of dating apps, tired of small talk, explaining myself to men who were more interested in the idea of me than who I actually was. So I told myself I'd take a break. And then he showed up. We met through mutual friends at a small get-together. Nothing loud, no party chaos, just people talking, laughing, music low in the background. I remember noticing him because he wasn't trying too hard, no peacocking, no performative confidence. He just listened. When he talked to me, he asked real questions, not the usual, so what do you do, followed by zoning out. He remembered things. He made me laugh in a quiet, clever way, the kind that sneaks up on you. By the end of the night, I caught myself thinking, okay, this is dangerous. We exchanged numbers. He didn't text immediately. Another green flag. When he did text, it wasn't you up or some lazy line. It was thoughtful, funny, consistent without being overwhelming. Our first date felt easy. No awkward silences, no pretending. We talked about childhood, goals, stupid fears, the kind of life we wanted. He paid attention when I spoke. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to one-up my experiences. By the third date, I realized something terrifying. I was letting my guard down. I started picturing little things, him meeting my friends, inside jokes, weekend routines. It wasn't obsession. It was comfort. And he seemed just as invested. He talked about future plans in a casual, non-forced way. Nothing heavy, just enough to signal he was thinking beyond the next drink. This wasn't a situationship. This wasn't confusion. This was lining up perfectly, which is why what happened next felt like emotional whiplash. It happened on what should have been our best date yet. We were out at dinner, sitting across from each other, laughing about something dumb that had happened earlier that week. The mood was warm, familiar, comfortable in that rare way that usually takes months to build. At one point, he leaned back in his chair, looked at me, and said something like, I really like how easy this feels. I agreed. And then, because timing is cruel, the conversation drifted into past relationships. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't defensive. I spoke honestly, but carefully. I explained that I valued communication, respect, emotional maturity, that I didn't want chaos anymore. He nodded along, smiled, acted like everything I was saying made sense. Then he laughed. Not a big laugh, just a small one. And he said, you know, most girls say that, but eventually they all start acting crazy. I blinked. I gave him a chance. I smiled slightly and said, what do you mean by that? That was his window, his chance to fix it. Instead, he doubled down. He went on this weird little rant about how women change once they get comfortable, how they become emotional, demanding, insecure, how men are expected to deal with it. And then, I swear I can still hear it, he said, but you don't seem like that. You're different. Different, as if that was a compliment. In that moment, something inside me went cold, because suddenly it wasn't just a bad joke. It was a belief that someday I'd disappoint him simply by being human. I tried one last time. I asked him if he realized how dismissive that sounded, how reducing women's emotions to crazy wasn't exactly mature. He shrugged, actually shrugged, and said, I mean, it's just biology. That was it. The home run missed. The crowd silent. Game over. I didn't storm out. I didn't yell. That's what he probably expected. Some dramatic reaction that would prove his point. Instead, I got quiet. I paid my half of the bill, I thanked him for dinner, and I watched confusion spread across his face. On the walk back, he tried to act normal. Cracked jokes, reached for my hand. I pulled away. He finally asked what was wrong, so I told him, calmly, clearly. I explained that I wasn't interested in being someone's exception, that I refused to audition for the role of cool girl who only earns respect by staying small and agreeable. I told him that if he already believed women eventually become a problem, then he was already preparing to resent me. He laughed it off, said I was reading too much into it. That's when I knew it was over, because men who dismiss your discomfort will always minimize your pain. He texted me the next day like nothing happened. I didn't respond. Then came the follow-ups, the confusion, the "did I say something wrong?" messages, and finally the defensive one. I feel like you sabotaged something good over nothing. Nothing. To him, it was nothing. To me, it was everything. I've replayed that night more times than I care to admit. Not because I regret walking away, but because it was such a perfect example of how quickly respect can collapse. Here's the thing men like him don't understand. It's not about the comment, it's about what the comment reveals. When someone tells you how they see women, believe them. When someone jokes about your future emotions, listen. Because one day, when life gets hard, and it always does, that belief becomes the lens through which they see you. And I refuse to build a life with someone who already thinks I'll become a burden. The irony? If he had simply listened, if he had said, "Hey, that came out wrong, I want to understand," this story would have ended very differently. But instead, he chose ego over growth. And that's the dumbest way anyone has ever ruined their chances with me. So, let me ask you this. If someone shows you who they are before the relationship even starts, do you walk away, or do you wait until the red flags turn into regrets? If you've ever experienced a moment where everything was perfect until it wasn't, share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, you already know what to do.